Let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day in the Middle Ages. And forget the plague or the constant threat of famine for a second. You, with your modern sensibilities and your unfortunate habit of making sarcastic comments under your breath, would be completely doomed by the legal system. We're talking about laws so bizarre, they make your building's homeowners association policies look like enlightened philosophy. A world where your neighbor's chicken could legally testify against you. In court, you think you're ready for that? If picturing yourself in historically accurate, legally mandated trouble is how you like to unwind, then welcome to your favorite medieval channel, your semi-regular dose of historical horror. Take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you're into this kind of historical self-torture. It helps the channel, and lets me know you enjoy watching the past get the unflattering, high-definition look it truly deserves. Now, before we get to the part where you stand trial for owning a suspiciously clever goat, I'm curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I love seeing which part of the world you're joining from. Let me know in the comments. While you still have the freedom to type whatever you want without being accused of consorting with demons. You wake up, not because you're well rested, but because the cold has finally won its long, nightly battle against your threadbare wool blanket. The fire in the center of your one-room hovel has died, leaving behind a ghost of warmth and the pervasive smell of wet smoke that clings to everything you own. Your back aches from the straw pallet, which has compressed into something with the consistency of a lumpy wooden plank. For a moment, you lie there, listening to the drip of water finding its way through your thatched roof, and contemplating the sheer, unyielding misery of being alive. This isn't just a bad morning. This is Tuesday. The first pang of hunger, a familiar, dull ache in your stomach, reminds you that contemplation is a luxury you can't afford. The only thing of value you possess, the single greatest investment of your entire life, is grunting softly somewhere outside. Your pig. That animal isn't a pet. It's your 401k, your emergency fund, and your only hope of not starving to death come winter, all wrapped in a thick hide and a layer of filth. You slowly sit up, your joints protesting with a series of clicks and groans that sound suspiciously like the final moments of a dying cartwheel. You pull on your damp tunic, which smells faintly of mildew and desperation, and shove your feet into leather shoes that are more hole than shoe. Time to check on the retirement plan. Except when you push aside the rough burlap flap that serves as your door, the small muddy enclosure where your pig is supposed to be is empty. A section of the wattle fence, a pathetic excuse for a barrier made of woven sticks and sheer optimism, has been smashed through. A cold dread, far more chilling than the morning air, washes over you. This is bad. This is a level of catastrophe that modern people reserve for accidentally deleting their entire hard drive. You scramble outside, the thick, oozing mud instantly claiming one of your shoes. You hobble forward, frantically scanning the miserable landscape of your village. And then you see it. Your pig, covered in mud and looking insufferably pleased with itself, is rooting around in your neighbor Edwig's private garden. Edwig's garden is his pride and joy. A small square of dirt where he grows turnips with a level of fanatical devotion that other men reserve for God or beautiful women. You see the carnage. Half-eaten turnips lie strewn across the ground, their white flesh gleaming in the gray morning light like tiny, delicious tombstones marking the grave of your future. Just as you're about to risk life and limb to retrieve the beast, Edwig himself appears at the door of his own hovel. He's a short, stout man with a face permanently fixed in a scowl of righteous indignation. He doesn't shout. He doesn't scream. He just points a trembling finger at your pig, then at you. His eyes narrow. "It's a demon," he whispers, his voice filled with a terrifying, genuine conviction. "That beast is possessed of a foul spirit. I saw it. It devoured my prize-winning turnip, with malice in its eyes." You try to reason with him. You offer to pay for the turnips, an offer that would leave you eating boiled grass for a month. You promise to fix the fence. You apologize profusely. But Edwig isn't interested in reasonable solutions. He's found a far more exciting path. Village drama. He accuses your pig not just of trespass and theft, but of criminal gluttony and unnatural wickedness. You weren't just in trouble. You were in a legal dispute that involved livestock testimony. Your life was now a fever dream directed by a petty farmer. He grabs your arm in a surprisingly strong grip. "We're going to the Reeve," he declares, loud enough for the entire village to hear. "The law will have its say about this creature." He begins to drag you, and by extension your very confused pig, towards the center of the village. People begin to emerge from their huts, their faces a mixture of curiosity and grim satisfaction. Nothing breaks the soul-crushing monotony of medieval life quite like the public downfall of a neighbor. You can feel their eyes on you, 100 tiny judgments that seal your fate before a single word has been spoken. Your reputation, a fragile and worthless currency, is already spent. The Reeve, a man named Oswald, who held the position mostly because his hut had 2 rooms instead of 1, was not known for his wisdom or compassion. He was known for enjoying his authority just a little too much. As Edwig parades you and your bewildered pig through the main thoroughfare, which is really just a slightly wider river of mud, you realize this is no longer about a broken fence and a few root vegetables. This is about power, public humiliation, and a legal system that considered animal testimony a perfectly logical part of due process. The cold mud finally seeps through the leather of your remaining shoe, and you feel a profound, soul-deep certainty that you are well and truly, royally screwed. You hadn't even had breakfast yet. Your pig, your only asset, was now a fugitive from justice, and you were its accused accomplice. This was your life now, a walking, grunting legal disaster. The Reeves hut is now in sight, and the crowd is swelling behind you. A murmuring tide of shabby, ghoulish spectators eager for the show to begin. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat counting down the last moments of your simple, miserable life as you knew it. The Reeves hut is an architectural marvel only by the pathetic standards of your village. It has a crude stone foundation, and the wattle and daub walls seem slightly less likely to collapse in a strong breeze. This is the seat of local power. Oswald, the Reeve, is sitting on a sturdy wooden stool just inside the doorway, polishing a small, rusty knife with a dirty rag. He looks up as your grim procession arrives, his expression a perfect blend of boredom and mild authority. He's a man whose greatest qualification for public office is owning a marginally less leaky roof. Edwig, still clutching your arm, shoves you forward. He then begins his testimony, a masterpiece of dramatic exaggeration that would make a modern stage actor weep with envy. He doesn't just say the pig ate his turnips. No. He describes the scene as if it were a brutal, premeditated assault. The pig, he claims, didn't just wander in. It breached his defenses with cunning and force. It didn't just eat. It gorged itself with a sinister satisfaction, pausing to look him directly in the eye, as if to mock his honest labor. He paints a picture of a diabolical creature, an agent of chaos sent by some dark power to specifically ruin his chances at the village's unofficial best turnip competition. You stand there, mute, a rope in your hand connected to a pig that is currently trying to eat a rock. This wasn't a court of law. It was a community theater production where all the actors were dangerously malnourished and believed in goblins. When Edwig finally finishes his breathless, spittle-flecked tirade, Oswald the Reeve turns his dull eyes to you. "Well?" he grunts. "What say you in your defense?" You open your mouth, intending to say something logical. Something like, "It's a pig. Pigs are stupid. It was hungry. I am very sorry." But what comes out is a pathetic squeak. The absurdity of the situation has stolen your voice. You're trying to formulate a legal defense against the charge that your pig has a bad attitude. All around you, the villagers are nodding along with Edwig's story. Goodwife Alara steps forward, her face a mask of concern. "Reeve Oswald," she says, her voice trembling slightly. "Last week I saw that very same pig, staring at the moon, for an unnatural amount of time." A murmur ripples through the crowd. Another man, a farmer named Godric, whose own chickens were notoriously aggressive, adds his piece. "The squeal it makes, it isn't right. It sounds like a mockery of a Christian tongue." You look at your pig. It has given up on the rock, and is now attempting to nap while standing up. This is your co-defendant. Oswald the Reeve lets the accusations hang in the air, savoring the moment. He puts down his knife, stands up, and walks a slow circle around your pig, stroking his chin as if contemplating a profound theological mystery. He pokes it with his boot. The pig lets out a soft oink. A gasp goes through the crowd. Was that a confession? Oswald stops and looks at the assembled villagers, then at you. His face is grave. "This is a serious matter," he proclaims, his voice ringing with self-importance. "The testimony of a good Christian man like Edwig, supported by the concerned, observations of the community, cannot be ignored." He leans in close to you, his breath smelling of stale bread and onions. "This beast's soul is in question. Its actions suggest a willfulness that is contrary to the nature God gave to simple beasts of the field." You want to scream. You want to ask if they've all gone mad. Did they forget to boil the water again? Instead, you just stand there, paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming force of their collective delusion. "Therefore," Oswald continues, stepping back and addressing the crowd like a king on a balcony, "I cannot simply levy a fine." He pauses for dramatic effect. "The pig must be held accountable. It will be sequestered and given a chance to repent its sins before a proper trial can be held." Sequestered. Your pig is being put in pre-trial detention. Your entire net worth is now legally an inmate. A new viral phrase for your miserable existence pops into your head. "Currently navigating the appeal process for my pig's soul." Oswald points a finger at you. "And you, as its keeper, are responsible for its incarceration. You will build a secure pen here, next to my hut, where it can be observed for signs of demonic influence or repentance. You will provide its food and water. You will be responsible for its containment until the circuit judge arrives next month. This is the judgment. You are not fined. You are not punished. Instead, you are sentenced to be the zookeeper for your own criminally accused pig, forced to build its prison at your own expense, under the watchful eyes of the very people who just accused it of being a tiny, four-legged Satan." Oswald dismisses you with a wave of his hand. The case closed. For now. The villagers begin to disperse, chattering excitedly. Their day's quota for entertainment well and truly met. You are left standing in the middle of the muddy track, holding a rope, staring at a pig that is now a ward of the state. The weight of it all, the crushing, idiotic, inescapable reality of your situation, settles upon you. You have to go find wood to build a jail for a pig that is too stupid to know it's alive, let alone guilty. There is no formal appeal process when your legal system is essentially the whims of a man whose primary hobby is looking important. You are dismissed. The show is over, but your work is just beginning. You stand there for a long moment, the damp, cold air seeping into your bones, the rope in your hand feeling less like a tether to your property, and more like a chain binding you to an inescapable, absurd fate. The pig, oblivious, grunts and strains against the rope, eager to find a new patch of mud or perhaps another politically sensitive vegetable to devour. Your first task is to procure the materials for this monument to stupidity, this porcine penitentiary. You don't have a neat stack of lumber behind your hovel like some kind of medieval millionaire. You have to find wood. This involves a long, miserable trek to the scraggly patch of forest at the edge of the village lands. Every step is a negotiation with the thick, greedy mud that threatens to steal your shoes. The forest itself is not a welcoming, sun-dappled place from a fairy tale. It's a damp, gloomy collection of skeletal trees and thorny undergrowth. You have a small, dull axe that looks like it lost a fight with a particularly sturdy branch. Each swing is a full-body effort, a jarring shock that travels up your arms and settles in your aching back. You're not felling mighty oaks, you're hacking away at fallen limbs and half-rotted logs, trying to find pieces that are solid enough to form a barrier, but not so heavy that you can't drag them back. The entire time, you feel the weight of unseen eyes. Taking wood is a legally gray area. Take too much, or the wrong kind, or from a patch of land the local lord fancies, and you could lose a hand. Your current legal predicament started with a turnip. You have no desire to escalate it to grand larceny of a twig. Your new job title flashes in your mind, a little piece of gallows humor to keep you from screaming, artisanal corrections, carpenter for criminally accused livestock. You manage to gather a pathetic pile of mismatched branches and logs, which you then have to drag back to the village, a journey that feels twice as long as the one out. You deposit your bounty near the Reeves hut, the designated construction site, and the real performance begins. Building this pig jail is a public spectacle. You are the unwilling star of the village's afternoon entertainment. Children who should be helping their parents with chores instead form a semicircle, pointing and giggling. Their parents watch from a more respectable distance, whispering to each other, their expressions a cocktail of pity, scorn, and profound gratitude that it's you and not them. Edwig, your nemesis, has naturally pulled up a stool. He sits there, arms crossed, offering a running commentary on your shoddy workmanship. The gaps are too wide, the creature will slip through, he'll call out, to the amusement of the crowd. That corner looks weak. A demon-possessed pig will have that down in a minute. You ignore him, focusing on the task, your movements stiff with fury and humiliation. You dig post holes with a sharpened stick in your bare hands, the cold mud squelching through your fingers. You try to lash the mismatched logs together with vines and strips of leather you had to cut from your own meager belongings. The structure that rises is a testament to your misery. It's crooked, ugly, and looks like it was designed by a drunkard in the dark. It is the physical manifestation of a sigh. As you're struggling to fit one particularly warped log into place, an old woman named Agnes detaches herself from the crowd of onlookers. She hobbles over, her face a spiderweb of wrinkles, her eyes holding the glint of absolute certainty that only the deeply superstitious possess. "You're doing it all wrong, boy," she rasps, her voice like grinding stones. You pause, bracing yourself. You know what's coming. Unsolicited, terrible advice. "A simple wooden cage won't hold a beast with a wicked spirit," she says, tapping one of your carefully placed logs with a bony finger. "You need to ward it. You must weave sprigs of rowan and iron nails into the joins to repel its dark power. And you should hang a pouch of salt and dill from the gate to blind its evil eye." She pushes a handful of wilted-looking weeds and a couple of bent, rusty nails into your hand. You have to accept them. In this village, rejecting a folk remedy is tantamount to declaring yourself a skeptic, which is a very short walk from being declared a heretic. So you thank her. Your voice, flat and dead, and dutifully begin lashing useless weeds into the pathetic structure. You can feel Edwig's smirk burning into the back of your neck. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the gray sky with strokes of dirty orange and purple. Your stomach is a hollow, aching pit. You haven't eaten all day. Every muscle screams. Finally, it's done. A small, crooked, weed-infested pen, a pig jail, stands as a monument to the day you lost a legal battle to a turnip. You shove your pig inside. It immediately tries to eat Agnes's magical herbs. You secure the gate, a flimsy collection of sticks that a determined toddler could probably disassemble. You turn to leave, wanting nothing more than to crawl onto your straw pallet and forget this day ever happened. But Oswald the Reeve emerges from his hut, wiping grease from his mouth. He's clearly just finished his dinner. He saunters over to your creation, circling it slowly, kicking at its base. He shakes the gate. "This is what you call a secure enclosure?" he asks, his voice dripping with condescension. "For a creature of such alleged malevolence?" "I think not." He looks at you, a cruel little smile playing on his lips. He's enjoying this. This is the best day he's had all year. This won't do at all. The pig is a flight risk. Its soul is a danger to this community. He points to the ground in front of the pen. "You will stand guard. You will stay here and watch the prisoner until morning to ensure it does not escape or use its dark arts to bypass your handiwork." He doesn't wait for a response. He turns and disappears back into his hut, the burlap flap falling closed. Behind him, shutting out the cold and your despair. The crowd dissolves, their entertainment concluded for the evening, leaving you alone in the gathering dark. You are cold, you are starving, you are exhausted, and you have just been sentenced to an all-night vigil, guarding a sleeping pig in a cage you built because your entire world is insane. The night descends not like a blanket, but like a slow drowning tide of black ink. The last vestiges of warmth abandon the air, leaving behind a sharp, biting cold that seems to have a personal vendetta against your thin tunic. You are on guard. Duty. Your charge is a sleeping pig. Your crime was, essentially, existing in proximity to your own property. You've pulled all-nighters in your past life, the one with soft beds and electricity, fueled by caffeine and the quiet panic of a looming deadline. This is a different beast entirely. This is an all-nighter fueled by turnip-based justice and the complete absence of hope. A state of being so miserable it feels profound. Your stomach has moved past the dull ache of hunger into a phase of active, audible protest, gurgling and cramping in a rhythm that sounds like a dirge. You wrap your arms around yourself, a futile gesture against the cold that has already made its home deep in your marrow. The village is silent, but not truly. It's a living silence, filled with the skittering of unseen things. The mournful hoot of an owl that sounds like a question you don't want to know the answer to, and the relentless whispering wind that probes the weaknesses in your clothing. You are seated on a damp, cold rock that is leaching the last of your body heat with startling efficiency. Your prisoner, the demonic hog of Edwig's fevered imagination, is fast asleep. It lets out a soft snort, its legs twitching as it chases some dream turnip in a meadow of pure bliss. Utterly untroubled by its own incarceration, or the existential crisis it has triggered for its owner. You find yourself staring at it with a strange mix of resentment and envy. In this moment, the pig is the freest creature in the world. It has no concept of law, reputation, or the soul-crushing weight of public opinion. It just is. You, on the other hand, are hyper-aware of everything. You are aware of the stiffness creeping into your knees, the burning exhaustion behind your eyes, and the sheer monumental stupidity that has led you to this rock. Your mind, desperate for any distraction, begins to play out imaginary conversations. You stage a brilliant legal debate with Oswald in your head, where you use sharp logic and devastating wit to expose the flaws in his reasoning. In this fantasy, the villagers see the error of their ways and carry you on their shoulders, apologizing for their foolishness. The fantasy dissolves, leaving you colder than before. This wasn't just punishment. It was a subscription to a 24/7, misery-as-a-service platform, and you were its only user. Hours crawl by with the speed of a dying snail. The moon, a sliver of bone-white light, offers no comfort, only a cold, indifferent illumination that makes the familiar shapes of the village huts look alien and menacing. At some point, you begin to hallucinate from sheer exhaustion. The shadows, thrown by the crooked fence of the pig jail, seem to twist and writhe. Is that a flicker of unnatural light in the pig's eye, or just a trick of the moon? You find yourself leaning forward, squinting, trying to see the evil that everyone else apparently sees so clearly. You see nothing but a pig, sleeping the sleep of the just and the profoundly stupid. A new wave of despair washes over you. What if you're the crazy one? What if, in this world, pigs really do conspire with dark forces and turnips have souls that can be grievously offended? The thought is so terrifying that you shake your head to clear it, the motion sending a fresh wave of dizziness through you. Sometime in the deepest, darkest part of the night, a real sound cuts through the quiet. A low growl from the edge of the village square. Your heart leaps into your throat. A wolf? A stray dog pack? Your hand instinctively goes to the dull axe. You used to build the pen, now lying at your feet. It's a pathetic weapon, but it's all you have. You stand up slowly, your joints screaming in protest, and peer into the gloom. Two yellow eyes gleam back at you from the darkness. The growl comes again, low and hungry. Your mind races. Are they here for the pig? Has some supernatural beast been drawn by the scent of its wicked soul? Are you about to die defending a sleeping hog from a hellhound? You raise the axe, your hands trembling, and let out a weak, pathetic shout. Get back! Go on! Get out of here! The eyes blink. A tail gives a tentative wag. A scrawny, rib-thin dog slinks out of the shadows, gives you a look of profound disappointment, and trots away. It wasn't a demon. It was just another starving creature like you. The adrenaline crash leaves you feeling even more drained, your body trembling with the aftershocks of a fear that was, like everything else in this situation, completely pointless. You sink back onto your rock, defeated. Surviving the night is no longer the goal. The goal is to not become a cautionary tale told by old women to scare children into finishing their gruel. Eat up, little Thomas. Or the man who failed to guard the demon pig will come and stare at you with his tired, haunted eyes. The first hint of dawn is not a glorious sunrise, but a slow, reluctant dilution of the darkness, as if the night itself is tired of the effort. The black sky softens to a deep, bruised purple, then to a miserable, washed-out gray. You survived. The pig is still there. You haven't fled. You've done as you were commanded. A small, bitter part of you expects this to be over. Surely, this display of obedience is enough. Oswald the Reeve emerges from his hut, stretching and yawning, looking well-rested and smug. He walks over, his boots making squelching sounds in the mud. He peers into the pen, notes the sleeping pig, then looks at you. He takes in your disheveled state, the dirt on your face, the wild look in your eyes, the way you're shivering uncontrollably. He doesn't offer a word of dismissal. He just nods slowly. Good, he says, as if commenting on the weather. The beast has remained. It has not been claimed by its dark master, nor has it vanished into thin air. This is a positive sign. It suggests the creature may be fit to stand trial. Your heart sinks. This isn't the end. This is the end of the beginning. A trial requires due process, even for the wicked, Oswald continues, clearly enjoying the sound of his own voice. The animal cannot speak for itself, so it is entitled to legal counsel, an advocate to speak on its behalf. He looks you dead in the eye, a cruel twinkle lighting his face. Your task for today is to secure a lawyer for your pig. Find someone to argue its case before the circuit judge arrives. Do not fail. A trial without counsel would be an insult to the law. He turns and walks away, leaving you to process the latest, most insane development in your Kafkaesque nightmare. You have to find a lawyer for a pig. In a village of illiterate, superstitious peasants who are already convinced your client is guilty, the sun is now fully above the horizon. A weak, watery disk that does little to dispel the chill from your bones, or the fog of unreality from your mind. You have been given your task. Find a lawyer. For your pig. The words echo in your sleep-deprived brain, a mantra of madness. You look at your client, who is now awake and enthusiastically rubbing its side against the bars of its pathetic jail, grunting with a simple, uncomplicated joy. It has no idea that its fate, and by extension your own, rests on your ability to find competent legal representation in a village where the most common legal dispute is resolved by seeing who can yell the loudest. You feel a wave of lightheadedness, a combination of hunger, exhaustion, and the sheer psychic weight of your predicament. You weren't just looking for a lawyer, you were looking for someone willing to commit career suicide over a case involving a possibly demonic farm animal. The applicant pool was, to put it mildly, small. There are only 2 people in this entire miserable hamlet who might even remotely qualify. Your first stop is the church. The church is the only stone building other than the Lord's distant manor, and it exudes an aura of cold, permanent authority. You push open the heavy wooden door and step inside. The air is thick with the smell of old incense, melting wax, and a damp subterranean chill that feels ancient. Father Alcuin, the village priest, is at the altar, meticulously arranging a cloth. He is a man made of sharp angles, from his pointed nose to his bony fingers. His face is perpetually etched with a look of mild disappointment in the world and everyone in it. You approach him hesitantly, your muddy shoes making a dreadful squelching sound on the stone floor. He turns, and his eyes, small and severe, fix on you. He doesn't need to ask why you're here. In his mind, wretched peasants only approach him for 2 reasons: death or sin. You stammer through the story, explaining the pig, the turnips, the Reeves judgment, and the absurd quest you are now on. As you speak, his expression curdles from disappointment to outright disgust. He listens without interruption, his fingers steepled before him. When you finally finish, your voice trailing off into a pathetic whisper, there is a long, heavy silence. "You come into the house of God," he finally says, his voice a dry rustle, "to seek aid for a pig." He says the word pig as if it's a vile curse. You speak of laws and advocates, of earthly justice for a creature wallowing in filth. The law you should be concerned with is God's law, which you have clearly offended to have such a curse brought upon your household. He takes a step closer, and you can smell the faint scent of communion wine on his breath. This is not a matter for legal debate. It is a matter of spiritual corruption. The beast is a reflection of your own soul. Its gluttony is your gluttony. Its wickedness is your wickedness. You do not need an advocate. You need to repent. He suggests a series of expensive prayers, a significant donation of candles to the church, and a lengthy public penance. He offers to perform a costly exorcism on the pig, but as for representing it in a temporal court, the idea is so offensive to him that he actually recoils slightly. "I do not speak for swine," he spits, turning his back on you. "I speak for God. Now leave. You are tracking mud in his house." You are dismissed. So much for the separation of church and state. Defeated, you trudge back out into the gray daylight, your spirit feeling as heavy as your mud-caked shoes. There is one last hope. Guthred the Mead Brewer. Guthred is considered wise, mostly because he's managed to live to an old age without being hanged or dying of dysentery, which in this village passes for genius. You find him near his brewing hut, stirring a massive, bubbling cauldron with a large wooden paddle. The air here is warm and sweet with the smell of honey and fermenting yeast, a tiny island of comfort in an ocean of misery. Guthred is a large man with a magnificent food-stained beard and a deceptively placid expression. You explain the entire sorry tale for a second time. He listens patiently, occasionally nodding and taking a long pull of mead from a wooden tankard. When you're done, he stops stirring and looks at you with eyes that seem both ancient and completely vacant. "Ah," he says, his voice a low rumble. "The pig and the turnip." He takes another long drink. "You see," he begins, leaning on his paddle, The question is not whether the pig ate the turnip. The question is, what is the nature of the turnip that it allowed itself to be eaten by the pig? He nods sagely, as if he's just solved the entire puzzle. You stare at him, unblinking, trying to find any trace of useful information in that sentence. There is none. It's like asking a chatbot for legal advice and getting a recipe for soup. A pig follows its nature, Guthred continues, his voice taking on a sing-song, philosophical tone. A reeve follows his. The law is like this mead. It is sweet to the man who serves it, and bitter to the man who drinks too much. You must learn to taste the difference. He offers you no help, no solution, just a string of baffling metaphors that leave you more confused than when you started. You thank him for his wisdom and walk away, the sweet smell of brewing mead now feeling sickly and mocking. You are out of options. There is no lawyer for your pig. You are the only one left. The horrifying thought solidifies in your mind. You will have to defend the pig yourself. You, who can't even win an argument with a priest, have to go up against the entire village's legal and theological might. You collapse onto the damp ground near the pig jail, your head in your hands. A new viral phrase for your despair. My pig's legal team is now just me, a dull axe, and 3 useless weeds given to me by a crazy person. The pig shoves its snout through the bars and gives your leg a wet nudge, not out of affection, but because it hopes you might magically produce food. It is in this moment of absolute rock-bottom despair that a pair of worn leather boots appears in your field of vision. You look up slowly. It's Edwig, your accuser, your nemesis, the author of all your current pain. You brace yourself for another round of gloating. But he's not smiling. He's shifting his weight from foot to foot, wringing his cap in his hands, a strange, nervous energy about him. He clears his throat. He looks around to make sure no one is listening. About the pig, he says, his voice barely a whisper. And the turnips. He leans in closer, his face a mask of anxious conflict. Perhaps, he says, looking you directly in the eye. Perhaps we have been too hasty. You stare at Edwig, the man who gleefully threw you into this nightmare, as his words hang in the air between you. Too hasty, you manage to croak, your voice rough with exhaustion and disbelief. The statement is so profoundly understated, so colossally inadequate for the situation, that for a moment you think it must be a joke. A new, crueler phase of your torture. You half expect him to burst out laughing and point at a hidden accomplice who's been documenting your misery for sport. But he doesn't laugh. He looks genuinely terrified, his eyes darting around the empty village square as if he expects Oswald's spies to pop out from behind a rain barrel. His face, usually a mask of smug indignation, has collapsed into a puddle of weak-chinned panic. You stay silent, giving him nothing, forcing him to stew in the awkward silence he created. This is the only form of power you have right now, the power of not letting him off the hook. He finally breaks, his words spilling out in a desperate, rambling torrent. It's the reeve, he whispers, leaning in so close you can smell the fear on his breath, a sour scent of sweat and poorly digested cabbage. Oswald. It's his new ditch-digging tithe. Did you hear about it? A day's labor from every man, or a silver penny, to dig a new drainage ditch at the edge of his own property. He calls it a community project. It's theft, that's what it is. You vaguely remember hearing grumbles about this new levy, another one of Oswald's petty cash grabs that everyone quietly ignored, hoping it would go away. I couldn't pay, Edwig continues, his voice cracking. My harvest was poor. The turnips were all I had. I don't have a penny to spare for Oswald's private landscaping project. This is where the story takes a sharp turn from tragic to utterly idiotic. Edwig, in a fit of what he clearly thought was strategic genius, concocted a plan. A plan so convoluted and stupid, it could only have been born from peasant desperation. He explains how he saw your pig, a frequent escape artist, sniffing around his fence that morning. An idea sparked. He would create a public spectacle, a legal drama so all-consuming, so bizarre, that it would completely occupy the Reeves' time and the village's attention. He would accuse your pig of being a demon. He thought it was brilliant. Oswald would be too busy presiding over the absurd case to go around collecting his illegal tax. The village would be too entertained to care about a drainage ditch. Edwig would be a secret hero, a master of misdirection. He never, ever thought it would actually work. He expected Oswald, after an hour of theatrical posturing, to get bored, levy a small fine for the turnips, and send everyone home. But he had fundamentally misjudged his opponent. Oswald didn't get bored. Oswald loved it. He saw the case not as a distraction, but as a platform. A way to exercise his authority, to be the center of attention, to make grand pronouncements, and to torture a fellow villager for sport. Edwig's plan had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. He had intended to create a small fire to distract from a robbery, and had instead burned down the entire village. "Now the circuit judge is coming," Edwig wails, his voice a pathetic whimper. "A real judge, from the city. He'll have records and clerks who can write. When he gets here and finds out this whole trial is based on a lie, that I perjured myself, they'll find me. They'll put me in the stocks. They might even hang me for wasting the king's time." You listen to this confession, and a universe of emotions explodes inside you. First, there is a volcanic, white-hot rage. The humiliation, the cold, the gnawing hunger, the sleepless night you just endured, all of it, not because of medieval superstition or the bizarre letter of the law, but because this sniveling, turnip-hoarding idiot next to you cooked up a half-assed tax evasion scheme. The sheer, breathtaking selfishness of it is staggering. You were his pawn, a disposable piece in his pathetic game against the Reeve. Then, beneath the rage, there's a small, bitter bubble of vindication. You weren't crazy. The world hadn't gone mad. It was just him. He was the crazy one. But that feeling is quickly smothered by a new and even more potent wave of dread. You had gone from defendant's owner to unwilling co-counsel, and now, finally, to accomplice in a half-assed peasant conspiracy. Your resume was getting profoundly weird. You are implicated. You are the owner of the demonic pig at the center of the fraudulent case. If Edwig goes down, he is absolutely taking you with him. Your fates are now lashed together. "You have to help me," he begs, grabbing the sleeve of your tunic. His hands are trembling. "We have to make this go away before the judge gets here. We can say the pig was cured. Yes, a miracle." Father Alcuin's prayers worked! It's no longer possessed! You pull your arm away in disgust. The man is a fountain of terrible ideas. And you think Oswald will just accept that? You hiss, your voice low and dangerous. After he's made this his personal stage play, he'll be furious. He'll know we're lying. You are now partners. Unwilling, resentful, but inextricably linked partners in crime. You and the man who ruined your life are now hunched over in the mud next to a pig jail, whispering, plotting, trying to figure out how to put the genie of his stupidity back in the bottle. This whole situation was like a terrible group project, where one member did something insane, and now everyone was going to fail. As you're trying to think through the layers of disaster, trying to find a path that doesn't end with both of you in chains, you hear it, a soft crunch of a footstep on the path behind you. Both you and Edwig freeze instantly, your blood turning to ice. You slowly, mechanically turn your heads. Standing there, partially hidden in the morning mist, is a figure. They are silent, watching you, and you have no idea how long they have been there or how much they have heard. The world seems to shrink until it contains only three things: you, the sniveling fool beside you, and the shadowy figure whose presence has just frozen the blood in your veins. Edwig lets out a small, terrified squeak, like a mouse caught in a trap. You hold your breath, every muscle tensed for a confrontation that you are profoundly unequipped to handle. The figure solidifies as it steps out of the morning mist, and your heart sinks. It's Goodwife Alara, but the woman who emerges is not the one you thought you knew. The vague, pious look of the village gossip is gone. In its place is an expression of sharp, calculating intelligence. Her eyes, which you'd always dismissed as vacant, are now as shrewd and piercing as a moneylender's. She heard everything, and unlike a simple zealot, she understood everything. She understood the lie about the demon, the fear of the circuit, judge, and most importantly, she understood the pathetic, desperate motive behind it all: the ditch-digging tithe. She holds all the cards, and from the faint, cruel smile playing on her lips, she knows it. A demon-possessed pig, she says, her voice no longer the raspy whisper of a prophet, but the cool, measured tone of a predator. What a fantastic story, truly inspired. I almost believed it myself. Edwig begins to stammer, a fresh wave of pathetic denials bubbling up, but Alara silences him with a single sharp look that could cut glass. Oh, be quiet, Edwig. Your little performance is over. The real conversation is just beginning. She turns her full attention to you. It's a deeply unsettling experience. You feel like a specimen under glass. She saw you as the leader, the one who took control of the situation, and has correctly identified you as the only one here capable of intelligent thought. You find yourselves in quite a predicament, she continues, circling you slowly like a wolf assessing a wounded deer. On the one hand, you have a Reeve who would be furious to learn he has been made a fool of in a fraudulent case. On the other, you have a circuit judge who is famously unkind to those who waste the court's time with peasant squabbles and perjury. And now, she stops directly in front of you. You have me. A new viral phrase etches itself into your brain. Your conspiracy has just entered into hostile takeover negotiations and the terms are not favorable. She has you. Utterly and completely. The knowledge of your scheme is a weapon, and she is aiming it right at your head. You wait for the inevitable, for her to march off to Oswald, to expose you both and clear her own name as a witness who was duped. But she doesn't move. She's waiting. This isn't about civic duty. This is about opportunity. I find myself thinking, she says, tapping a thoughtful finger against her chin, that a public scandal would be so messy, so unpleasant for everyone. Perhaps there is a way to resolve this entire affair quietly, a solution where everyone gets what they truly deserve. Edwig, desperate for any lifeline, nods vigorously. Yes, quietly. We can pay you for the trouble. I have a half bushel of oats. Alara lets out a short, sharp laugh. It's a chilling sound. I'm not interested in your oats, you turnip-brained fool. My needs are more specific. She lays out her terms. Her blackmail is a work of art, a multi-pronged attack on your desperation. Firstly, she has a long-standing dispute with her own neighbor, a man named Leofric, over a small strip of land where a large oak tree stands. The tree drops acorns into her yard, which her own pigs enjoy. But Leofric claims the tree is on his property. She wants you to use your newfound and entirely fictional influence as a miracle worker and demon tamer to convince Reeve Oswald to rule in her favor. Secondly, she points a bony finger at Edwig. Your prize-winning turnip patch, she says. I want it. For the next 2 planting seasons. You will till the soil, and I will sow and harvest. Your foolishness will feed my family. Edwig looks as if she just demanded he hand over his own child. His turnips are his entire identity. Finally, she looks back at you. And you. You are the architect of this little drama. Your payment will be silence. You will ensure this all works, and you will never speak a word of what you know. You will be my guarantee. The audacity is breathtaking. She's not just demanding payment. She's demanding you become her puppet, her agent in the village, leveraging a reputation you don't even want to settle her scores and secure her assets. It's a comprehensive, soul-crushing victory for her. She gives you her ultimatum. You have until sundown. If you agree to her terms, she will not only keep your secret, but will actively help you sell whatever story you invent to the village. If you refuse, she will walk straight to Oswald's hut and tell him everything, from the tax evasion scheme to your current pathetic attempt to cover it up. She turns to leave, pausing to deliver one final blow. Think carefully, she says, her voice once again a sweet, neighborly whisper that makes your skin crawl. Oswald may just put you in the stocks for a few days, but I hear the circuit judge has a particular fondness for removing fingers from perjurers. One for each lie told. She gives you a final, knowing smile and disappears back into the mist, leaving you and Edwig in a silence more profound and terrifying than any you have yet experienced. You are no longer just trying to survive a legal proceeding. You are now being actively blackmailed by a Machiavellian peasant who is 10 steps ahead of you. For a long time after Ilara melts back into the mist, there is only silence, broken by the gentle grunting of your pig and the frantic wheezing breaths of the man beside you. The world, which had been a stage for a simple, albeit absurd, legal drama, has suddenly transformed into something far more dangerous. It's a tangled web of conspiracy, blackmail, and extortion, and you are standing dead center. Edwig is the first to break. He makes a strange gurgling sound in the back of his throat and slides down to sit in the mud, holding his head in, his hands. "We're doomed," he moans, his voice muffled by his knees. "Doomed. She'll tell Oswald. He'll have me flogged. The judge will take my fingers, my turnip patch. She wants my turnips." He begins to rock back and forth, a portrait of utter peasant despair. You, however, are past the point of simple panic. The sheer, relentless escalation of your predicament has pushed you through the wall of fear and into a strange, cold landscape of pure, analytical rage. You are a cornered animal, and your mind is working with a desperate, feverish clarity. You pace back and forth in the mud, your worn shoes making sucking sounds with each step, as you dissect the trap Ilara has so perfectly constructed. You have 3 options, each one a different flavor of catastrophe. Option 1. Refuse her demands. She goes to Oswald. Your conspiracy is revealed. You and Edwig face the Reeve's wrath and the judge's justice. This is the path of certain doom. Option 2. Accept her demands. This is the path of slow, agonizing doom. How could you possibly convince Oswald to rule in her favor in a property dispute? You have 0 influence. You're the village pariah, the owner of the demon pig. And forcing Edwig to give up his land would be a death sentence for him, leaving him destitute. You'd be tethered to Ilara forever, her personal fixer, constantly living under the threat of exposure. Option 3. You could go to Oswald yourselves. Confess everything before she can. Throw yourselves at his mercy. You glance at Edwig, who is now quietly weeping, and dismiss this option immediately. Oswald has no mercy. He would make an example of you so terrifying that no one would dare question his authority or his tithes ever again. There is no good choice. Ilara has built a perfect prison. Your small-time tax evasion conspiracy had officially gone multi-level, acquiring a hostile new partner and a dangerously ambitious business plan. You stop pacing and look at the source of it all. The pig. It's watching you with its placid, beady little eyes, occasionally nudging the gate of its prison with its snout. It is a creature of absolute simplicity. It has no concept of blackmail, law, or property disputes. It wants food, it wants warmth, it wants mud. Its motivations are pure, unburdened by the labyrinth of human deceit. And that's when the idea strikes you. It's a spark of insanity so brilliant it might just be genius. You cannot fight Elara on her terms. You cannot win the game of secrets and threats she's playing. You have to flip the entire table over. You have to create a new game with new rules. A game so public and so powerful that her private little secrets become worthless. You walk over and haul Edwig up from the mud by his tunic. He looks at you with wide, tear-filled eyes. "There is a fourth option," you say, your voice low and intense. "We do what she wants. We give her a spectacle. But we make it our spectacle, not hers." Edwig stares at you, uncomprehending. You begin to explain, the plan forming in your mind as you speak, each new lie building on the last. "We can't give her what she wants," you say. "But we can give her something. She'll want even more. Power, respect, a holy reputation." You lay out the new, revised, high-stakes version of your public ritual. You'll go to Elara and agree to her blackmail, but with a condition. You'll tell her that for her power over the Reeve to be absolute, she must first be cemented in the eyes of the village as a holy woman, a prophet. And for that to happen, she needs a public miracle. "We will perform the test," you explain, your voice gaining strength. "The trial of the turnip and the coin. We will make it the biggest event this village has ever seen. We'll build it up, get everyone there, with Oswald presiding and Elara as the guest of honor, the holy witness who foresaw it all." Edwig is shaking his head. "But the pig, it'll go for the turnip, we'll be exposed, it's too risky." "Everything is risky," you snap, your patience finally breaking. "But in this plan, we control the narrative. We create a moment of public magic. When that pig walks out and does whatever it does, we will be the ones who interpret its meaning. We will tell the story, and if the crowd believes us, who is Oswald to disagree? Who is Elara? She wouldn't dare contradict a miracle that she herself is the star of. Her blackmail becomes useless. Her power will be based on the miracle story, a story that we write. She gets her reputation, Oswald gets his spectacle, and we get to walk away. It is a breathtakingly dangerous gamble. It relies on your ability to lie, Edwig's ability to act, the crowd's gullibility, and the completely unpredictable behavior of a pig. It is a plan built on nothing but air and audacity. Edwig stares at you, his mind slowly processing the layers of deception. He sees the madness of it, but he also sees the glimmer of a chance, the only one he has. The path of certain doom versus a path of theatrical, improbable escape. We would be lying to everyone," he whispers, as if the thought has only just occurred to him. You let out a short, harsh laugh. "Welcome to the conspiracy, Edwig. Now we just have to go and convince our blackmailer that becoming a living saint is a better deal than owning your turnip patch." You both look over at the pig, now snoozing in a patch of sun. Your entire future, the fate of your fingers, and your freedom, now rests on your ability to direct a 3-act play starring that animal as the lead. The sun has barely moved in the sky, but the entire world has shifted on its axis. You and Edwig, now bound by a shared, desperate insanity, find Goodwife Elara near the village well. She is speaking with another woman, but she dismisses her, instantly upon seeing you approach, her eyes glittering with predatory anticipation. She expects you to surrender. She does not expect you to come with a counteroffer. You don't give her a chance to speak. You launch directly into your pitch, your voice a low, urgent murmur, weaving a tale of power and glory. You acknowledge her shrewdness, you praise her insight, but you frame her blackmail as thinking too small. Your terms are just, Elara, you lie, your words smooth and practiced. But they are based on earthly power, on turnips and property lines, on the fear of a man like Oswald. That power is fleeting. What I am offering you is divine power, permanent power. You can see the flicker of interest in her eyes. You explain your plan for the public miracle, framing it not as a way to save your own skin, but as a way to elevate her. She wouldn't just be the woman who strong-armed her neighbor. She would be Alara the pious, Alara the prophet, the woman who stood at the center of God's own judgment. Her word on any matter, be it a property dispute or the quality of a neighbor's soul, would become unassailable. Why threaten the Reeve when you could have the entire village eating from the palm of your hand, looking to you for spiritual guidance? It's a masterful appeal to her vanity, and it works. She sees the logic in it immediately. The long-term, unshakable power of a holy reputation is infinitely more valuable than a 2-season lease on a turnip patch. She agrees. The dysfunctional trio is formed. The rest of the morning is a blur of frantic, whispered preparations. The village is already buzzing with the news Alara had spread earlier. But now she amends it, announcing that a holy test of the beast will be held at midday, a test that she herself will oversee. Edwig, looking pale and sweaty, is tasked with finding the most perfect, most succulent, most spiritually resonant turnip he possesses. He treats the task with the gravity of a man choosing a holy relic. Alara, for her part, goes home to put on her finest head covering, practicing a look of beatific serenity in a puddle of water. You are the director, the writer, and the lead actor in this farce, your mind racing as you try to choreograph every moment, to anticipate every possible thing that could go wrong. Which is everything. You were the master of ceremonies for a theological game show where the grand prize was not getting your fingers cut off. By midday, it seems the entire population of the village, and even some from the surrounding farms, has gathered. They form a thick, murmuring circle around the muddy expanse of the village square. There is an air of electric anticipation, a mixture of a village fair and a public execution. Reeve Oswald sits on a large stool that has been placed for him, his arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask of skepticism and intrigue. He is here because he has no choice. To denounce a potentially holy event would be politically unwise. At the appointed hour, your procession begins. Alara walks first, her head held high, her face a perfect portrait of pious gravity. Then comes Edwig, clutching his chosen turnip to his chest as if it were a sacred orb. You come last, leading the pig on its rope. The crowd parts before you, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and morbid curiosity. You bring the pig to the center and tie its rope to a small post, leaving it just enough slack to move around. You take your place and begin the performance. Your voice, surprisingly steady, rings out across the silent square. You speak of sin and redemption, of the mysterious ways of providence, and of the need for a clear sign in a time of doubt. You build the drama, your words painting a picture of a great spiritual struggle converging on this one pathetic patch of mud. Then the ritual begins. Edwig steps forward and, with great ceremony, places the magnificent turnip on a clean cloth on one side of the pig. You then step forward. You hold up a single, gleaming silver penny that you had begged from a suspicious Father Alcuin, claiming it was for a holy test. You place the coin on a flat stone on the opposite side of the pig. Gluttony versus greed. The stage is set. Alara raises her hands. Let the trial begin, she intones, her voice quivering with theatrical faith. You walk over to the pig. Every eye in the village is on you. You can feel Oswald's penetrating stare. You can feel Alara's anxious ambition. You can feel Edwig's soul-crushing terror. Your own heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. You look down at the pig. It looks up at you, its expression one of bottomless, placid ignorance. Everything comes down to this. You take a deep breath, whisper a silent, desperate prayer to any god that might be listening, and you undo the rope from its neck. The pig is free. For a moment it doesn't move. It just stands there, blinking in the sudden glare of public attention. The silence in the square is absolute. It is the sound of 100 people holding their breath. Then, the pig takes a hesitant step. It lifts its snout and sniffs the air. It turns its head to the left, towards the plump, juicy turnip, the very picture of earthly temptation. A low murmur ripples through the crowd. Edwig makes a small, strangled sound. The pig sniffs again, then turns its head to the right, its beady eyes seeming to fix on the glint of the silver penny. Greed, avarice, the sin of men. Alara clasps her hands together, her knuckles white. The pig takes another step, then another, moving away from the center point. It walks with a new, undeniable purpose, its path now clear. The crowd leans in as one, a collective gasp hanging in the air. The pig's choice is made. The pig stands in the center of the silent square, a nexus of immense spiritual and legal pressure. It has considered gluttony. It has considered greed. The collective will of the village hangs heavy in the air, waiting for a sign. With a final, decisive grunt, the pig turns away from both the gleaming coin and the succulent turnip. It trots with an air of absolute purpose towards the middle of the square, where days of rain have created a magnificent, soupy, and utterly irresistible puddle of mud. Without a moment's hesitation, it plunges in, sinking up to its belly. It lets out a long, blissful sigh of pure, unadulterated porcine joy, and begins to roll, covering itself in a thick, glorious coat of filth. For a single horrifying second, there is dead silence. The village is confused. This was not one of the options. This is not a clear sign of anything but a desire for mud. You see Reeve Oswald's eyes narrow, his mouth opening to deliver a judgment of contempt. You see Alara's face begin to fall, her moment of glory dissolving into a muddy farce. You have maybe a heartbeat before you lose control of the narrative forever. You do not waste it. You throw your arms into the air, your face alight with a manufactured ecstasy. A miracle, you bellow, your voice echoing across the square with all the force you can muster. It is a miracle. The crowd turns to you, their faces a sea of blank confusion. You point a trembling, dramatic finger at the happy pig. Behold, the beast was offered the temptations of the flesh, you cry, gesturing to the lonely turnip. And it refused. It was offered the temptations of worldly wealth, you shout, pointing to the silver coin. And it refused. It has rejected the sins of man, and has instead chosen the simple, humble earth that God has provided for all his creatures. It has chosen poverty and humility. It has washed itself clean not with water, but with the very soil from which we all came. The demon has been cast out. The pig is pure. It is the most ridiculous, nonsensical interpretation possible. It is also, in that moment, the most beautiful story they have ever heard. A wave of understanding, then relief, then riotous joy erupts from the crowd. They needed a miracle, and you gave them one. They cheer, they shout, they praise the heavens. They have their sign. Edwig, seeing the crowd's reaction, bursts into theatrical, sobbing tears of relief, falling to his knees and thanking God for his deliverance. Alara, quick as a viper, sees her opportunity. Her face transforms back into a mask of serene wisdom. She raises her hands for quiet, a beatific smile on her face. "The heavens have spoken," she cries. "Just as I foresaw, a cleansing, a true and holy sign for all to witness." She is magnificent. She effortlessly reclaims her role as the prophet, the vessel of divine knowledge, her status now cemented not by a lie, but by a publicly acknowledged miracle. Her blackmail is forgotten, replaced by a much more potent social currency. All eyes now turn to Reeve Oswald. He is trapped. The entire village, his constituency, has just witnessed and accepted a divine event. To deny it would be to declare himself not only a fool, but an enemy of the faith. A muscle twitches in his jaw. He stands up slowly, pasting a look of solemn wisdom on his face. He clears his throat. "Never in all my days," he begins, his voice booming with feigned piety, "have I seen such a clear manifestation of divine will. The law is a complex instrument, but it must always bend to the wisdom of heaven." He points at the pig. "This creature is clearly cleansed. Its soul is pure. Therefore, by the authority vested in me, and by the clear will of God, I declare this case closed." Another roar goes up from the crowd. "It's over. You've won. You have successfully prosecuted the case for your pig's innocence by orchestrating a theological coup." The walk home is a surreal experience. People who had been throwing metaphorical stones at you just yesterday now pat you on the back. They look at your pig not as a demon, but as a holy relic, a minor celebrity. You lead it back to its pen, the same pen you built as a monument to your humiliation. It now feels like a shrine. That evening, you sit in your hovel, the fire casting a warm, gentle light. The pig, your co-conspirator and savior, is snoring softly in its now-repaired enclosure. You have survived. You have outmaneuvered a tyrant, neutralized a blackmailer, and convinced an entire village to believe in a lie so audacious it became the truth. You stare into the flames and realize the most important lesson you've learned. The law in this place wasn't about right and wrong. It was about who could tell the most convincing story. You survived not because you were innocent, but because, for one afternoon, you were a better liar than everyone else. And in a world built on layers of superstition, desperation, and petty cruelty, the ability to spin a good yarn wasn't just a skill. It was the only real power a person could have. You lean back, a small, weary smile on your face. You are exhausted, you are still poor, but you are free. And you have a story that no one would ever believe. You are a painter. And in this age of mud, plague, and illiteracy, that makes you a rare and valuable commodity. Something between a skilled craftsman and a magician. You don't capture souls, despite what the more superstitious peasants whisper, but you do capture something far more dangerous, the truth. Or more often, you get paid a handsome sum to lie your doublet off with a brush. Your current commission has brought you to the stone fortress of Baron Alaric, a man whose reputation for piety is matched only by the vastness of his lands. You have been hired to paint a family portrait, a grand statement of his legacy, featuring him and his new, impossibly beautiful wife, Lady Seraphina. It's the kind of job that could make your career, or abruptly end your life, depending on how well you navigate the treacherous currents of a nobleman's ego. The castle is a masterpiece of performative wealth. Grand tapestries depicting heroic, entirely fictional family battles hang on the walls, their vibrant colors doing little to warm the oppressive, bone-deep chill of the stone halls. Servants scurry about with their heads bowed, their silence a testament to the discipline, or fear, that governs this household. You are given a small antechamber with a high, north-facing window to serve as your studio. The light is perfect. Everything else is unnerving. You are a 14th century public relations specialist, hired to Photoshop a family's image using oil paints and terrifyingly realistic brushstrokes. Your first meeting with the Baron and his lady is a carefully staged affair. He stands before the grand fireplace, one hand resting on the head of a snarling wolfhound, the other on a gilded Bible. He speaks at length about the importance of humility, the virtue of charity, and how this portrait must serve not as a monument to his own vanity, but as a humble reflection of God's blessings. You nod along, your face a mask of earnest attentiveness, while your mind is cataloging the cost of the rings on his fingers and the imported velvet of his tunic. He could feed your entire village for a decade with what he's wearing. Then there is Lady Seraphina. She is a classic beauty, the kind poets write terrible, overwrought verses about. But as you study her face, preparing for the preliminary sketches, you see what the poets would miss. It's not sadness, not exactly. It is a terrifying, profound emptiness. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Her posture is perfect. Her hands folded gracefully in her lap, but she holds herself with the rigid stillness of a trapped animal that has learned that struggling only tightens the snare. The Baron speaks for her, answers for her, and occasionally rests his hand on her shoulder, in a gesture that looks like affection to the casual observer. But your artist's eye sees the way her muscles tense beneath the silk. During the first few days, you work on sketches, observing them, learning their faces. The public sittings are a farce. Baron Alaric recites prayers, discusses theology, and dictates the exact composition of the portrait. He is to be central, his hand resting on a globe to signify his worldliness, the Bible prominent. His wife is to be seated slightly behind him, her gaze adoring, her hands holding a single white lily to signify her purity. It's a ham-fisted, obvious piece of propaganda, and your job is to make it look like a masterpiece. The real education comes in the moments between the poses. You see the flash of cold fury in the Baron's eyes when Serafina accidentally shifts her position too soon. You hear the sharp, low-toned comment he makes to her when he thinks you are out of earshot. A comment that makes the blood drain from her face. You notice that she never ever speaks unless spoken to first, and her servants seem more afraid of her than of the Baron himself, avoiding her gaze as if it were contagious. The hidden sin of this noble facade isn't a secret. It's the very atmosphere of the castle. It's a quiet, suffocating poison. You try to capture the truth in your private sketches, the subtle terror in Serafina's eyes, the cruel set of Alaric's jaw when he's not performing his piety. But you know none of it can make it to the final canvas. You are being paid to paint the lily, not the rot beneath the soil. One evening, you are cleaning your brushes, the smell of linseed oil and turpentine filling your small studio. The Baron and his lady have retired for the night. The castle is quiet. As you are putting away your charcoal sticks, you notice one is out of place, lying near the bottom of your supply chest. You pick it up and realize it's not one of yours. It's lighter. You examine it in the fading light, and your blood runs cold. It's not charcoal. It's a small, tightly rolled piece of dark paper, disguised to look like one of your tools. Your heart hammers in your chest. This was a deliberate act, a message. Your hands trembling, you look around the empty room, feeling 1,000 unseen eyes on you. You carefully unroll the tiny scroll. There is no writing on it. Instead, there is a single, exquisitely detailed drawing, done in silver point. It is a drawing of a small dead bird, its neck broken, lying at the base of a wilted white lily. You understand immediately. It's from her, Lady Serafina. It's a message, a warning, a plea. It's the truth of her situation, delivered in the only language she knows you will both understand and be forced to conceal. You are no longer just a painter hired to create a lie. You are now the silent keeper of a terrible secret, a secret that has been placed, quite literally, into your hands. And you have the horrifying certainty that the dead bird in the drawing is a portrait of her. Your first instinct is to crush the tiny, incriminating scroll in your fist. Your second is to throw it into the dying embers of the fire. Your third, and the one that wins, is to do both. You hold the fragile piece of paper for a moment longer, the stark, brutal image of the dead bird burning itself onto the back of your eyelids. It's not just a drawing. It's a confession, a testament, and a death sentence, all rolled into one. You toss it into the hearth. The paper curls, blackens, and vanishes into a wisp of smoke, taking its secret with it. But the image remains in your mind, a permanent stain. You have just destroyed the only piece of evidence of a crime that hasn't happened yet, an act of self-preservation that feels sickeningly like betrayal. You are complicit now, not just in the painting of a lie, but in the concealing of a terrible truth. Sleep offers no escape. You dream of birds with broken necks and the smell of wilting lilies. When you return to your studio the next morning, the air is thick with a new, palpable tension. Or perhaps the air is the same, and you are just newly attuned to it. You are no longer a painter. You were a high-stakes cryptographer, trying to decode the silent signals of a terrified noblewoman, while her husband, the human equivalent of a locked door, watched your every move. The sitting begins. Baron Alaric is in a foul mood, his piety today wearing even thinner than usual. He complains about the light, the chill in the room, the quality of your charcoal. You murmur apologies and adjustments, your mind entirely focused on Lady Seraphina. She takes her seat, her posture as rigid and perfect as ever. Her eyes, however, seek yours for a fleeting, desperate second. It's a question. Did you find it? You can't speak, you can't nod. Any overt sign would be noticed, so you do the only thing you can. As you busy yourself with arranging your pigments on the palette, you allow your hand to brush against a small pot of white paint, tipping it over. As you curse your clumsiness and begin to clean the spill, your eyes meet hers again. In that moment, you let the professional mask drop from your face, allowing her to see a flicker of the horror and understanding you now share. You see her hands, hidden in the folds of her dress, clench into tight fists. The message has been received. You have acknowledged her truth. The invisible bond of this terrible secret is now forged between you. The act of painting becomes a form of torture. You are trying to render the Baron's face, to capture a look of noble authority, but all you can see is the petty tyrant beneath. Every time you try to paint the serene, adoring smile he demands on his wife's face, your hand hesitates. Your brush wants to paint the truth. It wants to trace the faint, dark circles under her eyes, to capture the subtle tremor in her lip, to render the sheer, soul-deep terror that has made a home in her gaze. You find yourself constantly correcting, painting over the truth, forcing the lie onto the canvas. Your art has become a war against your own perception. The Baron, a man obsessed with control, senses the shift. He doesn't know the cause, but he feels your hesitation, your distraction. His scrutiny intensifies. He gets up frequently, pacing, behind you, his shadow falling over your canvas. "Is there a problem, painter?" he asks, his voice dangerously smooth. "Her skin. You've made it look pale. My wife is the picture of health. You must capture her vitality." He puts a heavy hand on your shoulder, and you have to fight the urge to flinch. Paint what you are told to see, not what your melancholic, artist's temperament imagines. His presence is a constant, suffocating weight. To make matters worse, you acquire a second shadow. The Baron's steward, a severe silent man named Conrad, begins making frequent visits to your studio. He claims he is there to ensure you have enough wine, or that the fire is lit, but his true purpose is obvious. He is a spy. He moves with a ghost-like quietness, his eyes missing nothing. He will stand in the corner for long stretches, observing the lady, his face a blank wall. One afternoon, as you are mixing colors, he speaks. "The Baron is a collector of beautiful things," Conrad says, his voice a low monotone, never looking at you directly but at the portrait. He cherishes them, but beauty, especially the delicate kind, is so fragile. It must be protected, preserved. It is not a conversation, it is a threat, delivered by proxy. The day's sitting concludes. You are exhausted, your nerves frayed to the breaking point. The Baron comes to inspect your progress. You have managed to create a passable lie on the canvas. A stoic Baron, a placid lady. It is technically proficient but emotionally hollow, a beautifully rendered husk. Alaric stares at the canvas for a long time, his expression unreadable. He then looks at his wife, who stands silently by the window. "It is adequate, for now," he says slowly. He turns his cold eyes back to the painting, a strange, possessive gleam in them. The portrait must be perfect. It will be the only image of her that will last forever. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle in the cold room. It is important, he adds, his voice dropping to a near whisper, to capture a subject before they wilt. He walks out of the room without another word. You are left staring at the canvas, the smell of oil paint suddenly making you feel ill. You are not painting a portrait. You are painting a eulogy for a woman who is still breathing. And you now have a deadline, not for the painting, but for her life. The Baron's final words hang in the air long after he is gone. A poisonous vapor that infects everything in the room. Before she wilts. The statement was delivered with the casual indifference of a man discussing the weather, but it landed with the force of a death sentence. You are no longer merely a witness to a toxic marriage. You are the official portraitist for a murder in progress. The deadline you are working towards is not the completion of a painting, but the completion of a life. Every day you spend mixing colors and cleaning brushes is a day less that Lady Seraphina has to live. This knowledge transforms your fear. The cold, self-preservationist terror you felt before begins to burn, transmuting into something hotter, sharper, a desperate, defiant rage. You cannot challenge him. You cannot run to the nearest authority, for he is the nearest authority. To speak out would be to sign your own death warrant alongside hers. You are trapped, a fly in a gilded amber box. But you are not helpless. Your power, your only power, lies in the very tool he has hired you to use against his wife, your art. You cannot paint a public accusation, but you can embed a silent one. You can turn his monument to vanity into a Trojan horse, a beautiful oil-painted lie designed to smuggle a deadly truth past the gates of his ego. You will paint the portrait he demands, but you will poison it with truth, hiding clues so subtle that only a keen and skeptical eye would ever decipher them. Your art will be your confession and your accusation. The next day, you approach the canvas with a new, terrifying purpose. The work becomes an act of high-stakes rebellion, a silent war waged with sable brushes and ground pigments. Your first target is the lily, the symbol of purity he so arrogantly demanded she hold. You render it with painstaking detail, each petal a luminous, perfect white. Then, with a brush so fine it holds only a single hair, you mix the tiniest fleck of brown and ochre. You apply it to the edge of the most prominent petal, a single, almost invisible spot of decay. It is nothing. It is everything. It is the wilt he promised, a prophecy hidden in plain sight. Next, you turn to her eyes. He wants adoration. You will give him the shape of it. You paint her gaze directed towards him, her head tilted at the correct, submissive angle. But as you work on the tiny reflective surface of her pupils, you do not paint his handsome, noble reflection. Instead, you create a masterful, ambiguous darkness. You use shades of umber and black to create a distorted shape that is not quite a man, but more the shape of the bars of a cage or the shadow of a closing door. Her eyes are not a mirror of love, but a reflection of her prison. The most dangerous act comes last. The grand tapestry he uses as a backdrop, the one depicting a glorious hunt. The Baron had specified that the lead hunter, a heroic figure on a white stallion, should bear a passing resemblance to his own noble profile. You oblige. But in the corner of the tapestry, amongst the dense foliage, you begin to paint a new detail, one not in the original design. With a hand that trembles slightly, you recreate the image from her secret message. You paint a small white bird, almost lost in the background, fallen amongst the roots of an ancient tree. Its wings are crumpled. Its neck is bent at a sharp, unnatural, and very final angle. Every brushstroke is an act of defiance that sends a jolt of pure terror through you. You work in a state of heightened paranoia. your ears straining for the sound of footsteps, your eyes darting towards the door. The steward, Conrad, continues his silent patrols, his presence a constant, chilling reminder of the risk you are taking. He will stand behind you for unnerving stretches of time, his silence more accusatory than any words. You can feel his gaze, on your hands, on the canvas, and you pray that your additions are too subtle, too masterfully integrated for his untrained eye to notice. You have just applied the final touch of white to the fallen bird's wing. Your heart is pounding, the brush slick with sweat in your hand. You are so focused, so lost in the tiny, dangerous world you are creating, that you do not hear him approach. The Baron demands the utmost realism. Conrad's voice, flat and close, shatters your concentration. You jump, nearly smudging the wet paint. He is standing right behind your shoulder, his shadow falling across your work. He leans in, his eyes scanning the canvas with an unnerving intensity. He seems to be looking at nothing and everything at once. You try to control your breathing to appear calm, a simple artist at his work. His gaze sweeps over the flawed lily, lingers for a moment on the darkness in Seraphina's eyes, and then, to your absolute horror, it settles on the exact corner of the tapestry you were just painting. He points a long, pale finger, its tip hovering inches from the canvas, directly at your secret message. Every detail must be perfect, he says, his voice unchanging. Tell me, master painter, what is the meaning of this little bird in the corner? Time itself seems to congeal. Conrad's finger is a lance, aimed at the heart of your secret rebellion. His question is not an inquiry. It is a judgment. Your mind, a frantic scramble of panicked thoughts, races through 1,000 terrible explanations. Every muscle in your body is screaming at you to run, but you are cemented to the floor, pinned by his cold, unwavering gaze. A bead of sweat traces a path down your temple. You have one chance, one sentence to build a shield around yourself. You force a smile onto your lips, a difficult, brittle thing. You hope it looks like the weary condescension of a master artist explaining his craft to a layman, and not the terrified grin of a man about to have his throat cut. Ah, that, you say, your voice a marvel of feigned casualness. A trifle, an artist's folly, you might say. You pick up a fine brush, gesturing vaguely at the spot. It is a memento mori. You let the Latin phrase hang in the air, knowing that foreign words, especially ones that sound vaguely religious, often have a pacifying effect on the uninitiated. A reminder of death, you elaborate, warming to your lie, finding strength in its sheer audacity. In all great works, steward, it is wise to include a small nod to God's ultimate authority. Even here, you sweep your hand towards the grand heroic hunt in the tapestry. In the midst of noble power and vitality, we are reminded that death comes for all. The great hunter and the small bird alike will one day answer to their maker. You had successfully gaslit a tyrant's henchman using Art History 101, and the adrenaline felt a lot like sheer gut-wrenching terror. You are framing your act of subversive treason as an expression of profound piety. You are using the Baron's own performative godliness as your defense. It is a nauseatingly perfect lie. Conrad's eyes remain fixed on the bird for a long moment. You can practically see him weighing your words, searching for the hint of deceit. He is no fool. He may not understand the subtleties of art, but he is a master of detecting fear and insubordination. Yet, he can find no logical flaw in your explanation. To challenge a memento mori would be to challenge the very concept of piety, a dangerous act in a household so ostentatiously devout. He slowly retracts his finger. I see, he says, his voice flat, betraying nothing. The Baron appreciates such theological depth. He gives you one last, long, unreadable look before turning and gliding out of the room, leaving you with the chilling uncertainty of whether you have just saved your life or merely signed your death warrant in a more elaborate script. You nearly collapse with relief, your legs trembling. The close call has left you shaken, but it has also proven that your dangerous game might just work. The day wears on, a haze of paranoia and focused effort. Later that afternoon, as you are cleaning your palette, a young woman enters. It's Elise, one of Lady Seraphina's ladies-in-waiting, a nervous girl with eyes like a frightened fawn. She carries a silver tray with a goblet of wine, a common courtesy, but her movements are stiff with anxiety. She avoids looking at you directly as she sets the tray down. As she turns to leave, she accidentally brushes against a stack of your prepared canvases, sending one clattering to the floor. You both bend to retrieve it. For a brief second, you are close, hidden from the doorway. "Her ladyship," Elise whispers, her voice so quiet it's almost lost in the rustle of her dress. She prays for your work to be completed swiftly. Her eyes finally meet yours, and they are filled with a desperate, pleading urgency. She says you have a gift for capturing the truth. Before you can respond, she stands up, curtsies, and scurries from the room, leaving you with a goblet of wine and a fresh dose of paranoia. Is this a message of solidarity? A confirmation that your dangerous additions to the portrait have been understood by the one person who matters? Or is it another, more subtle trap, a test of your loyalty orchestrated by the Baron? You don't touch the wine. The final inspection of the day comes near sundown. The Baron enters, with Conrad trailing behind him like a shadow. You brace yourself. Alaric walks directly to the canvas, his eyes immediately finding the corner of the tapestry. You see Conrad murmur something to him. The Baron leans in, studying the tiny dead bird. You begin to repeat your carefully rehearsed explanation about the memento mori, but he cuts you off with a raised hand. "Yes," the Baron says slowly, a strange, thin smile spreading across his face. "The steward informed me of your devotional detail. It is a fine sentiment, painter, a reminder that all beauty is fleeting." He looks from the dead bird on the canvas to his wife, who stands pale and silent by the window. The smile does not reach his eyes. "I am pleased with your insight, and with the pace of your work." Your heart sinks. This is the worst possible outcome. He has not only accepted your lie, he has embraced it, twisted it to fit his own narrative. He turns to you, his voice resonating with a tone of finality. "Excellent work. You should be finished within the week." The words strike you like a physical blow. A week. He then turns to his wife, his smile widening. "And then, my dear," he announces to the room, "we shall have a grand feast to celebrate its unveiling. A final celebration of your beauty, before it is immortalized forever." The emphasis on the word final is unmistakable, a perfectly polished stone dropped into a deep, dark well. Your gamble has failed. Your act of defiance, your subtle rebellion, has not bought her any time. It has only pleased the monster, and he has just moved up the deadline for her execution. The Baron's pronouncement of a one-week deadline and a final feast settles not like a weight, but like a shroud. The hours that follow are a blur of cold, numbing fear. You clean your brushes with mechanical precision, your hands steady, but your mind is a maelstrom. The casual cruelty of his timeline has extinguished the small, defiant fire you felt while hiding secrets in his portrait. What good are clever, painted clues if the subject of the painting is dead? A hidden message on a canvas is a cold comfort to a corpse. Your rebellion feels trivial, a child's game in the face of his monstrous calm. You are no longer an artist, you are a clockmaker, counting down the hours to a predetermined chime of death. That night, sleep is a distant country you cannot reach. You lie awake on your lumpy pallet, staring into the oppressive darkness of your small room, replaying the Baron's words, tasting the metallic tang of fear in your mouth. You feel a profound, soul-crushing helplessness. You are a stranger here, a hired craftsman with no status, no allies, and no power. You are utterly alone with this knowledge, or so you think. The next afternoon, as you work listlessly on the background details of the portrait, forcing yourself to paint the golden threads of the tapestry while thinking of the cold earth of a grave, Elise, the lady-in-waiting, enters again. She carries a small tray with a plate of bread and cheese, sustenance you have no desire for. Her movements are even more bird-like and fearful than before. She places the tray on a small table and curtsies, but as she straightens up, she presses a small, hard object into your hand, her fingers cold and trembling. Her eyes, wide with terror, hold yours for a fraction of a second before she turns and flees the room. You stand frozen, the object heavy and hot in your palm. It is a book, a small, leather-bound book of psalms, the kind a noble lady might carry. Its cover is worn, its pages edged in faded gold leaf. It is her personal prayer book. With shaking hands, you open it. At first, you see nothing. But as you riffle through the pages, you notice faint, almost invisible marks, tiny dots made with a pinprick under certain letters across several pages. This is not a random gift. This is a message, painstakingly and dangerously assembled. You spend the next hour in a state of frantic, paranoid decryption, your back to the door, ready to snap the book shut at the slightest sound. You find the marked letters page by page and write them down on a scrap of parchment with a piece of charcoal. Please, HELP, MEIF, YOU, HAVE, A simple message, childish in its plea, yet it carries the weight of a dying woman's last hope. It is a direct appeal, a confirmation that she sees you not just as a witness, but as a potential savior. The helplessness you felt before curdles into a new, more agonizing form of despair. What help can you offer? What can a painter with a few pots of color do against a baron with an army, a fortress, and the law in his pocket? To attempt to help her escape would be suicide for you both. To refuse is to be the man who listened to a woman plead for her life and did nothing. You are tormented. You pace your small room, the book clutched in your hand, your mind a battlefield. You cannot send a written reply. It is too risky. You must use the same language you now share, the language of symbols. You take up a fresh piece of high-quality parchment, the kind reserved for final sketches. You draw a single, perfect key, its form intricate and ornate. A key symbolizes hope, a way out, an unlocking of a prison. But then, you hesitate. To offer a key is to offer a promise you cannot keep. With a heavy heart, you add to the drawing. Behind the key, you sketch a crossroads, two paths diverging into an uncertain gloom. You add a third detail, a winding, thorny vine, wrapping itself around both the key and the crossroads. The message is now more honest and more bleak. There is a key and there is a choice, but the path to escape is dangerous and overgrown. It is the best you can do, a statement of solidarity, a shared acknowledgement of the peril, but not a promise of salvation. The next challenge is returning the message. You must wait for Elise. She comes near dusk, under the pretext of retrieving the tray. Her face is pale, her eyes begging the question you cannot answer. You press the rolled-up drawing into her hand as you give her the tray, your fingers brushing hers for a moment. It is a fleeting, electric contact of shared conspiracy. She hides the parchment in her sleeve, nods once, a tiny jerky motion, and turns to leave. But as she reaches the doorway, the broad, menacing figure of Conrad the steward appears, blocking her path. "The lady is asking for you, Elise," he says, his voice flat, his eyes missing nothing. "You seem flustered. Is your work proving too much for you?" Elise freezes, a deer caught in the glare of a lantern. You see the terror in her eyes, the way she instinctively clutches the arm where your message is hidden. Your heart stops. This is it. You are discovered. The silence in the doorway is a tangible thing. A stretched wire of pure tension. Conrad's question hangs in the air, and Elise sways on her feet, her face a mask of such pure crystalline terror that she might as well confess everything on the spot. You see her mouth open, a prelude to a disastrous stammer or a sob, and you know you have to intervene. The only defense is a furious, belligerent offense. You slam a pot of paint down on your work table, the sound echoing unnaturally. In the quiet room, "By all the saints," you roar, channeling the persona of a temperamental, inconvenienced genius. Is it impossible to find a moment's peace in this castle? How am I to capture the lady's delicate spirit when I am constantly interrupted by fumbling servants? You glare at Conrad, then turn your manufactured wrath upon the trembling Elise. This girl, she brings me Riesling when I asked for Burgundy. She clatters about like a spooked goat, and now she stands in the doorway, gaping like a fish, disturbing the light. She is the reason she seems flustered, steward. Her incompetence is flustering me. Your tirade is so sudden and so filled with artistic indignation that it catches Conrad off guard. You are giving him a simple, believable explanation for the scene. A demanding artist and a terrified, incompetent servant girl. It's a common enough dynamic in a noble house. It is at the very least more plausible than a secret conspiracy being passed via parchment. Conrad's cold eyes shift from Elise's terrified face to your own theatrical fury. You are the valuable asset here. The craftsman the Baron is paying a small fortune for. Your work is paramount. After a long, tense moment, he seems to come to a decision. The potential conspiracy is abstract. The Baron's desire to have his portrait finished is concrete. See that you are not so flustered. In the future, Elise, he says, his voice flat. He grips her arm, his fingers pressing into her thin sleeve, and steers her out of the room. He gives you a final, lingering look over his shoulder before he disappears down the hall. You are left alone, your heart hammering against your ribs. Your performance has worked for now. But you know with a chilling certainty that you have not fooled him. You have merely presented him with a puzzle he has not yet solved. The following day, the Baron's psychological war takes a new, more poetically cruel turn. He gathers the household in the great hall after the midday meal. He stands before them, his arm around Lady Seraphina, who looks small and fragile beside him. He makes a grand speech, his voice resonating with false warmth, about the precious nature of beauty and his boundless love for his wife. My dear Seraphina's spirit is as delicate and as lovely as a songbird, he proclaims to the assembled servants, Conrad, and you, who have been summoned to witness this display. And so, I have procured a gift to honor that spirit. A gift to keep her safe and cherished, here, always by my side. On his signal, a servant brings forward a large object draped in velvet. With a flourish, the Baron pulls the cloth away. It is a magnificent bird cage, wrought from gold-leafed iron, impossibly ornate and intricate. Inside, perched on a tiny swing, is a single, small white finch. The Baron didn't just give his wife a gift. He gave her a gilded metaphor for her own existence, and everyone in the hall, bound by fear and fealty, applauded the poetry of his cruelty. Seraphina's reaction is a masterpiece of self-control. Not a tear, not a gasp. Just a slight stiffening of her spine and a hollowing of her eyes so profound that it seems to extinguish the very light within them. She curtsies and thanks her husband, her voice a perfect melodic lie. The portrait sitting that afternoon is almost unbearable. The cage has been placed in the room with you, and the little bird's cheerful, meaningless song provides a grotesque counterpoint to the suffocating silence. Seraphina is a statue, her vitality completely gone. You struggle to paint the lie, your brush feeling heavy and useless in your hand. How do you paint an adoring wife when the model is a living ghost? A woman so thoroughly terrorized she has retreated to some deep, unreachable place within herself? Your eyes drift to the globe that stands beside the Baron's chair, a symbol of his power and reach. In the deep shadow it casts upon the floor, you see a new secret you must add to the canvas, the faint, barely there silhouette of a birdcage. As she holds her pose, her hand clutching the wilting lily, the heavy bracelet on her wrist slides down for just an instant, and you see it. A smudge of faint color against the pale skin of her wrist. It is a bruise, a sickening bloom of purple and yellow, shaped distinctly like the gripping fingers of a powerful hand. All the air leaves your body. The abuse is not just a thing of the soul, of quiet terror and veiled threats. It is a thing of the flesh. He is not just breaking her spirit. He is breaking her body. The hidden sin is no longer hidden at all. It is there, in the open, for anyone with the courage or misfortune to see it. The sight of it, so stark and so real, changes you yet again. The fear, the anger, the defiant artistry. It all coalesces into a single, cold point of clarity. You are no longer painting a memorial. You are painting an indictment. Later, after the sitting is over and you are alone in the fading light, you stare at the canvas. You look at the beautifully rendered, delicate hand of the painted Serafina, the one holding the white lily. You take your finest brush and mix a tiny, almost transparent glaze of violet and yellow ochre. You lift the brush, its tip holding the color of her secret physical pain. You hold it poised over the perfect, unblemished skin of her wrist on the canvas, a single terrible question hanging in the air. Do you dare? The brush trembles in your hand, its tip laden with the color of violence. For a long, breathless moment, you are ready to do it. To paint the truth in its stark, ugly reality. To place the bruise on her painted wrist and turn the portrait into an undeniable accusation. It would be an act of pure, suicidal defiance. Your hand lowers. You cannot. To do so would not save her. It would only condemn you both, immediately and irrevocably. The Baron would see it, and his retribution would be swift and absolute. You wipe the purple glaze from your brush, your heart aching with a mixture of self-loathing and frustrating pragmatism. Your current strategy is not working. The subtle messages in the painting, the dead bird, the wilted lily, are clever, yes, but they are a scholar's game, a silent protest for a future that Lady Serafina will never see. You need more than symbols. You need information. You need a weapon forged from something harder than paint. You need the truth in its entirety. You realize with a sickening certainty that Serafina is not the beginning of this story. To understand her future, you must uncover the castle's past. You were no longer just an artist. You were a forensic historian, digging for the bones of a murder that had been buried under layers of stone, silence, and fear. The next morning, you adopt a new persona. You approach Conrad, your face a mask of artistic diligence. You explain that to truly capture the essence of the Baron's legacy, you must understand his domain. The play of light on the ancient stones, the history woven into the very mortar of the walls. These are the details, you argue, that separate a mere likeness from a timeless masterpiece. You request permission to wander the castle, to sketch its forgotten corners and absorb its noble history. It is a brilliant pretext. It appeals to the Baron's vanity and his desire for a painting that screams authenticity. Permission is granted. Your investigation begins. You walk the cold, echoing halls not as a painter, but as a ghost hunter. You sketch the architecture, but you are truly studying the servants. You see how they flinch when the Baron's name is mentioned, how they communicate in a silent language of nervous glances and subtle gestures. They are all prisoners here, in their own way. You learn quickly that the senior staff, Conrad, the head cook, the stablemaster, are a wall of silence, their loyalty to the Baron absolute. You need someone on the fringes, someone overlooked. You find her in the mending room, a small, stuffy chamber filled with the scent of beeswax and old linen. Her name is Marjorie, an elderly woman who has been a part of this castle's fixtures longer than the tapestries. Her hands are gnarled with arthritis, but her eyes, when they look up at you, are sharp and startlingly clear. You approach her, cautiously, under the guise of inquiring about the specific weave of the tapestry in the portrait room. You speak of your desire to render it faithfully, as a testament to the family's long history. Then, you make your move. It's a shame the First Lady of the castle is not equally honored, you say wistfully, looking at a piece of silk in your hands. I have heard she was a great beauty. A portrait of her would have been a great help to me in understanding the family's artistic patronage. The name of the first wife, unspoken for years, hangs in the air. Marjorie freezes, her needle stopping mid-stitch. She looks at the doorway, her fear palpable. "We do not speak of the Lady Elspeth," she whispers, her voice a dry crackle. You press gently, your voice full of feigned sympathy. "Forgive me. It is just that I feel her absence in these halls. A beautiful woman, gone before her time. It is a tragedy." The word tragedy unlocks something in the old woman. A flood of resentment and sorrow that has been dammed up for years. "Tragedy?" she scoffs, her voice low and bitter. "Tragedy is when God calls a soul home. What happened here? That was something else." She tells you about Elspeth. A spirited, laughing woman who loved horses and the outdoors. A stark contrast to the Baron's grim piety. She challenged him, argued with him, and refused to be his silent, adoring ornament. Then, one day, after a particularly fierce argument, she was confined to her rooms with a sudden fever. Days later, she was dead. The Baron's personal physician, a man who owed him everything, signed the certificate. "She wasn't ill," Marjorie rasps, leaning closer, her eyes burning with an old injustice. "I saw her through her window, the day before she died. She was pacing like a caged wolf. She was angry, not sick." Marjorie confirms your worst fear. The first wife was erased. Her clothes, her books, her personal effects, all burned. Her portrait, which Marjorie swears existed, vanished from the Great Hall overnight. "They burned her things," the old woman whispers, her voice trembling. "But they cannot burn stone." Her eyes hold yours. It's a clue. She loved the old chapel in the West Wing, the one her father built. It was her sanctuary. No one has set foot in there since the Baron ordered it sealed. This is it. The piece you were missing. You thank Marjorie for her help and leave, your mind reeling. You find the abandoned chapel easily. It is in a disused part of the castle, its door bound by a rusty iron chain. It's a simple matter to find a loose bar in a nearby window, just large enough to squeeze through. You drop into a room thick with the dust of years and the silence of the forgotten. Moonlight streams through a grimy stained glass window, illuminating a scene of decay. As you approach the crumbling altar, your foot steps on a flagstone that shifts under your weight. Your heart leaps. You kneel down and, using the hilt of your knife, pry the heavy stone loose. Beneath it is a small, hollowed-out space, and inside, wrapped in a moldering piece of oilcloth, is a small, leather-bound book. With trembling hands, you lift it out. It is a personal diary. On the first page, in faded but elegant script, is a name: Elspeth. You have found the voice of the castle's first ghost. You retreat to the relative safety of your small studio, the dusty, leather-bound diary clutched in your hand. The door is barred, a feudal gesture in a castle where every wall seems to have ears. By the flickering light of a single candle, you open the book. The small book in your hands is no longer a diary. It is a ghost's deposition, a signed affidavit from the grave, and holding it feels like holding a burning coal. You begin to read, and as you do, the story of Lady Seraphina's present becomes a terrifying echo of Lady Elspeth's past. The early pages are filled with a young woman's hope. Elspeth writes of her love for Alaric, of his handsome face and his reputation for piety, of her dreams for their life together. But within months, the tone begins to shift. The entries become shorter, more cautious. She describes his coldness when they are alone, his obsession with public perception, his corrections of her behavior, her laughter, her opinions. She writes of his sudden, violent rages over trivial matters, always followed by grand, public displays of affection that leave her feeling confused and terrified. It is Seraphina's story, written in a different hand a decade earlier. As you read deeper, the ink on the page seems to grow darker. Elspeth writes of being forbidden from riding her favorite horse, then from walking the grounds unattended. She describes his chilling jealousy, his accusations of infidelity with a stable boy who was brutally flogged and dismissed for smiling at her. You see the cage being built around her, piece by piece. Then comes the final section. The entries are frantic, the elegant script devolving into a spidery, panicked scrawl. She writes of a fierce argument over her disobedience, after which the Baron confined her to her chambers, telling the household she had been struck by a sudden, dangerous fever. And then, the last entry. It is dated the day before her death. Her words are a dagger in the heart of the past. He sent his physician to me. A fever, he claims. But I feel no heat. He brought a tonic. I refused it, but he held me down and forced the bitter liquid past my lips. It was not medicine. My limbs feel heavy. A strange coldness spreads from my chest. Alaric does not mean for me to recover from this illness. If I am not here to write tomorrow, know that it was not God who took me, but my husband. You close the book, your hands shaking violently. It is all there, a confession, a detailed blueprint of his method, of murder, isolation, manufactured illness, and a physician-assisted poisoning. This is what awaits Seraphina. This is the Wilt he so casually spoke of. The diary is absolute proof, a weapon of immense power. But wielding it is like trying to wield a thunderbolt. To show it to anyone is to invite the lightning strike upon yourself. You cannot act alone. There is no other choice. You must trust someone. The next day, you seek out Elise. You find her gathering linen, her face pale and drawn. You tell her you have a matter of the utmost urgency to discuss concerning her lady's safety, and that she must meet you in the old mending room after evening prayers, and she must tell Marjorie to be there as well. The terror in the young girl's eyes is matched only by her resolve. She nods. The meeting is a conclave of shadows. The three of you, the painter, the terrified lady-in-waiting, and the ancient servant, huddled in the small, cluttered room, the air thick with the scent of old wool and fear. You don't waste time. You simply open the diary and read Elspeth's final entry aloud. Your voice is low and steady, but the words fill the room with a cold, undeniable horror. When you finish, the silence is heavy, broken only by a soft, ragged sob from Elise. She sees Seraphina's death notice written 10 years in advance. Marjorie, however, does not weep. Her face is a mask of grim, stone-like fury. Her decades of suspicion have been vindicated in the most terrible way. "I knew it," she rasps, her gnarled fingers clenching into a fist. "I knew he was a snake, in the robes of a saint." In that moment, your desperate gamble pays off. The shared knowledge of the diary binds you together. You are no longer three separate, powerless individuals. You are a conspiracy, an alliance of the damned. "We cannot let it happen again," Elise says, her fear hardening into a fragile courage. "We must do something." You look at your allies. An old woman with no strength, a young girl with no power, and an artist with no weapon but a brush. It is a pathetic rebellion. But it is all Seraphina has. We cannot fight him, you say, stating the obvious. Justice is not possible. Vengeance is suicide. There is only one path: survival. We have to get her out of here. The word hangs in the air. Escape. It seems as impossible as flying. The castle is a fortress, its walls thick, its gates guarded. Conrad's eyes are everywhere, and even if she could get outside the walls, where would she go? A woman alone with no money and no protection would not survive long. Yet, it is the only goal worth considering. You begin to plan, your hushed voices weaving a desperate plot. The feast. The night of the portrait's unveiling. It is, as you had thought, the only real opportunity. The castle will be full of guests. The staff will be distracted. The Baron's pride and ego will be focused entirely on his grand display. It is under the cover of his own vanity that you must strike. Elise, you instruct, you must tell the lady. Let her know there is a plan. Let her know she has allies. Her hope is a weapon we need. Marjorie, who knows the castle's hidden paths better than anyone, begins to map out a potential route through the servants' passages to a small, unguarded postern gate in the west wall. But the plan hits its first, monolithic obstacle. Oh, route is useless without a destination, Marjorie says grimly. And a horse to get there. We need help from outside. Someone in the town to have horses waiting. Someone who can be trusted. The problem is immense. Smuggling a person out of the castle is one thing. Smuggling a message out first is another. Every provision, every merchant, every visitor is logged and watched by Conrad. A secret message, discovered would doom you all before the plan could even begin. You are left there, in the dark, with a ghost's testimony in your hands, and a plan that is stalled before it can even start, facing the seemingly impossible task of breaking through the wall of silence that Alaric has built around his world. The problem of the outside world looms over your small conspiracy, a wall as high and as cold as the castle's own. For 2 days, you are paralyzed by it, going through the motions of your work, while a knot of dread tightens in your stomach. The portrait is nearly finished, each stroke a countdown to the final celebration, and your grand plan for escape remains nothing more than a desperate fantasy. The breakthrough comes from Marjorie. During another hushed, frantic meeting in the mending room, she reveals a potential crack in the fortress wall. "Old Thomas," she says, her voice a low whisper. "The tallow man. He collects the kitchen scraps, the grease, the discarded bones for his soap making. He stinks so much of his trade that the guards wave him through without a second glance. No one looks in his cart. No one wants to." She explains that Thomas was fiercely loyal to the First Lady, Elspeth, who had shown him kindness when his own wife was ill. He despises the Baron. He is your only hope. The plan becomes tangible, terrifyingly real. You take a tiny scrap of parchment. On it, you write a message, not in your own hand, but in the shaky, block-like letters of someone barely literate, to avoid tracing it back to you. The falcon is caged. A friend of Elspeth needs a fast horse and a guide at the west postern gate on the night of the feast. For the love of God and the memory of the wronged, do not fail. You make no mention of names, only concepts Thomas will understand. You seal the scrap in wax, and Elise, her hands trembling, sews it tightly inside a small, hollowed-out chicken bone salvaged from the kitchen. Her task is the most dangerous, to bury this grim message in a bone deep within the barrel of kitchen refuse destined for Tomas's cart. The attempt is a symphony of silent terror. Elise nearly fumbles the bone when the castle's brutal head cook enters the larder unexpectedly. She has to feign a dizzy spell, dropping a sack of onions to create a diversion while she shoves the evidence deep into the barrel of rancid grease. She succeeds, but returns to you pale and shaking, the near miss having cost her dearly. Meanwhile, Your own performance must continue. You are in the final stages of the portrait, a task that now feels ghoulish. You are polishing a lie, adding the final glazes that will make the canvas gleam with a life its subjects do not possess. You are a master of your craft, and this, you realize with a cold horror, will be your masterpiece. A perfect, beautiful, resonant lie. Lady Seraphina herself seems to sense the shift. She is no longer just a passive victim. During the final sitting, with Conrad watching from the corner, she plays her part. She lifts a hand to her temple, complaining of the oppressive heat from the fire. In the brief flurry of activity as Elise rushes to open a window, Seraphina's eyes meet yours. "Hurry, Master Painter," she says, her voice loud enough for Conrad to hear, but her eyes speaking a different message entirely. "For I fear I will not have the strength to sit for much longer." It is a warning, a plea, and an act of courage, pushing you forward. You are all now actors in the final scene, speaking your lines of loyalty and deference while passing messages of treason in the wings. The entire castle was a stage, and only a handful of you knew the play was a tragedy about to be rewritten, as a desperate jailbreak. On the final day, the Baron comes for his inspection. He stands before the finished portrait for a long time, his arms crossed. You have done it. You have painted the adoring wife, the powerful and pious husband, the symbols of their wealth and virtue, and hidden within are your poisons. The decaying lily, the reflection of a cage, the shadow of a bird cage, and the tiny fallen bird that started it all. He sees none of it. He sees only his own magnificent reflection, the perfect story he wants the world to believe. "Masterful," he breathes, his voice filled with genuine, monstrous satisfaction. "You have exceeded my expectations. You have captured not just their likeness, but their very essence." He rewards you with a heavy purse of gold, a bonus for your speed and skill. The gold feels like a blood payment in your hand. The portrait is taken away by servants to be prepared for the evening's unveiling. The plan is in motion. The message has been sent, you hope. The escape route is planned. But there is no way to know if Tomas the Talloman found the bone, if he understood, if he was willing to take the immense risk. Everything now relies on the courage of a smelly old man you have never met. The evening arrives. The great hall is ablaze with candlelight, filled with the chatter of richly dressed lords and ladies. Guests from neighboring fiefdoms invited to witness the Baron's triumph. Music plays, wine flows. You stand in a corner, a hired craftsman, an observer, your heart a cold, heavy stone in your chest. Then she enters, on the Baron's arm. Lady Seraphina is breathtaking. She is dressed in a gown of deep blue velvet, her hair adorned with pearls. She is smiling, a serene, perfect hostess. She is playing her part so well that for a terrifying moment, you wonder if you imagined it all. But then, across the crowded, noisy hall, her eyes find yours. The smile does not falter, the mask does not slip, but her eyes, wide and dark in the flickering torchlight, scream a single, silent question that echoes the frantic beating of your own heart. Is anyone coming for me? The great hall is a symphony of manufactured joy. Lords and ladies, their faces flushed with wine, laugh too loudly at the Baron's jests. The music of lutes and pipes weaves through the air, a cheerful thread in a tapestry of lies. You stand, in the shadows, a ghost at the feast, the purse of gold at your belt feeling as heavy as a gravestone. Your eyes keep darting between Seraphina, a vision of tragic perfection at the Baron's side, and the exit. Every passing moment feels like a grain of sand dropping in an hourglass that holds her life. Finally, the moment arrives. The Baron rises, calling for silence. A hush falls over the hall. He begins his speech, his voice booming with pride and false sentiment. He speaks of lineage, of loyalty, of the duty of a husband to cherish beauty. He gestures to Seraphina, and she smiles, a perfect, hollow movement of her lips. Then, with a grand flourish, he pulls the cord. The velvet cloth falls away, revealing the portrait to the assembled guests. A collective gasp of admiration ripples through the crowd. They see only the masterful technique, the rich colors, the noble bearing. They see the lie, and they find it beautiful. Baron Alaric's chest swells with pride. His eyes are fixed on his own glorious image. This is your signal. Across the room, Elise, her face pale but resolute, begins to walk towards the main doors. She stumbles, as planned, directly into the path of a servant, carrying a massive silver tray laden with goblets. The crash is spectacular. A cacophony of shattering crystal and spilling wine erupts, drawing the attention of nearly every guest in the hall. In that instant of chaos, you move. You glide to Seraphina's side. "My lady, the shock. Allow me," you murmur, taking her arm. It's a perfect pretext. You are the concerned artist, guiding your fragile subject away from the commotion. The Baron is too absorbed in accepting compliments on his portrait to notice for a crucial few seconds. You steer her not towards the main doors, but towards a small, tapestry-covered archway, a servant's passage. Marjorie is waiting there, a dark shadow in the gloom. She pulls the tapestry aside, and the three of you plunge into the darkness behind the walls. The world becomes a maze of cold, narrow stone corridors. Marjorie leads with the certainty of a creature born to the dark, her hand never faltering. Behind you, you can hear the muffled sounds of the feast, but soon they are replaced by a more terrifying sound, the distant, angry shout of the Baron. He has noticed. The hunt has begun. You run, your footsteps echoing alongside the frantic beating of your own heart. You can hear other footsteps now, heavier, more purposeful. The guards, they are fanning out, searching. You round a corner and the west postern gate is there, a slab of oak and iron between you and freedom. As Marjorie fumbles with the heavy, rusted bolt, a figure materializes from the shadows ahead, blocking your path. It is Conrad. He holds a heavy cudgel in one hand, his face impassive, but his eyes burning with the cold satisfaction of a hunter who has cornered his prey. There is no time for words. As he moves towards Seraphina, you shove her behind you and charge, your only weapon the desperate weight of your own body. The collision is jarring. He is stronger than you, his movements efficient and brutal. He brings the cudgel down, and you raise your arm to block it. A searing pain shoots through your forearm, but you ignore it. This is not a duel. It is a brawl in the dark for a woman's life. As he raises the club again, Marjorie, with a strength you would never have believed possible, yanks a loose stone from the wall and brings it down hard on the back of his head. Conrad grunts, stumbles, and collapses into a heap. You don't wait to see if he is dead or alive. You throw your entire body against the rusted bolt of the gate. It groans, resists, then gives way with a loud crack. The gate swings open to a blast of cold night air and the scent of damp earth. And there, waiting under the shadow of the wall, is a hooded figure holding the reins of 2 horses. Tomas. The Talloman came through. "Go!" You gasp to Seraphina, pushing her towards the opening. You press the small, leather-bound diary into her hands. "Take this. Tell the truth. Live." For a moment she hesitates, her eyes filled with a terrible conflict. But Marjorie pushes her forward. "He is right, my lady. Go. Your life is the only victory that matters." She scrambles out the gate and is helped onto a horse by the hooded Tomas. They disappear into the night without a backward glance. The alarm bells begin to toll across the castle. You watch the empty darkness where she vanished, a wave of profound, painful relief washing over you. You have done it. The bird is free. You turn back into the castle, your arm throbbing, your fate sealed. You are found within minutes, dragged by furious guards back to the Great Hall. The guests are gone. The room is a wreck of spilled wine and fear, and in the center stands the Baron, his face a mask of incandescent fury, standing before his perfect, silent portrait. He looks at you, and in his eyes you see your own death reflected. But as you look back at the canvas, at the beautiful lie you created, you feel a strange sense of peace. You see the hidden secrets, the dying lily, the cage in her eyes, the fallen bird in the corner. You have lost your freedom, your future, and likely your life. But the portrait will hang here for centuries, a monument to his vanity. And you know, with an artist's certainty, that someday, someone with a keen eye will look past the beautiful surface and see the truth you hid within. And they will know that the beautiful woman in the painting was not a possession. She was a survivor. And you were the one who opened the cage,